D1 walked through the cold metal hallways of the Imperial Palace. His cleaning supplies rattled in the bucket he carried. The night shift had just begun, and most of the palace was quiet. Only a few guards stood at their posts, their insect-like bodies barely moving as he passed. He had worked in the palace for 2 years now. It was better than the farms where most humans lived. At least here, he had a bed and regular meals. The Korvath treated their servants well enough as long as the work got done. Hyjin waited for him at the entrance to the dragon sanctuary. She was the head of all palace servants, a human woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She looked at D1 with an expression he could not read. "You are being reassigned," she said without greeting. D1 set down his bucket. "Reassigned, but I just learned the upper halls. The Emperor's dragon needs a new night attendant. You will start tonight." Something cold moved through D1's chest. Every servant knew about the Emperor's dragon. They whispered about it during meals. The beast that wept every night. The creature that no one could calm. "The others refused?" D1 asked. Hyjin's face softened slightly. 14 servants have tried. None lasted more than a week. The weeping keeps them awake. Some say it drives them mad. "And you think I will be different?" "I think you are observant. I have watched you work. You notice things others miss." She handed him a data pad. "The sanctuary is through those doors. Your duties are simple. Keep the space clean. Make sure the feeding systems work. Do not touch the dragon. Do not try to communicate with it." D1 took the pad. His hands felt heavy. "What if I fail?" "Then you will be reassigned again, probably to the mining colonies." Hyjin's expression hardened. "Do not fail, D1." She walked away, her footsteps echoing in the empty hall. D1 stood before the massive doors of the dragon sanctuary. They were made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. He placed his hand on the entry panel. The doors opened with a sound like thunder. The sanctuary was enormous. The ceiling stretched up into darkness. Glowing plants grew along the walls, giving everything a blue-green light. The air smelled like rain and something else, something ancient. Then he saw her. Asha was bigger than any living thing D1 had ever seen. She was the size of a transport ship. Her body was covered in crystalline scales that caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. Her head was long and elegant, with eyes that glowed like distant stars. 4 legs, each as thick as tree trunks, supported her massive body. Wings lay folded against her sides, so large they could cover a building. She looked at him, just looked, those glowing eyes fixed on his small human form. D1 forgot to breathe. "Hello," he whispered. The dragon did not respond. She turned her head away, looking toward the far wall of the sanctuary. Her crystalline scales dimmed slightly. D1 spent the next hours learning the sanctuary. The feeding system was automatic, delivering nutrients through tubes in the floor. The cleaning bots worked constantly, keeping everything spotless. There was very little for him to actually do. He sat on a bench near the entrance and watched Asha. She barely moved. Sometimes her tail would shift. Sometimes she would blink. But mostly she just stared at the far wall. The data pad contained information about her. She was 300 years old. She had been bonded to Emperor Velthar for 90 years. She was classified as a Class 7 combat dragon, capable of destroying entire fleets. She had fought in 12 major battles. She had never been defeated. The last entry was 3 years old. It simply said, "Subject exhibits nightly distress vocalizations. Cause unknown. No medical abnormalities detected." D1 looked up from the pad. 3 years. She had been crying for 3 years and no one knew why. The hours passed slowly. D1 cleaned things that did not need cleaning. He checked systems that were working perfectly. He tried not to think about what would happen when the weeping began. Then, exactly at midnight according to the palace clock, Asha moved. She lifted her massive head. Her scales began to glow brighter. She shifted her body, turning to face the far wall more directly. Her legs folded beneath her in a specific position, like a cat preparing to sleep. And then she began to cry. The sound was like nothing D1 had ever heard. It was deep and high at the same time. It resonated in his chest, making his heart beat strangely. It was the sound of pure sadness, raw and endless. Ashaz's eyes leaked tears. They were not like human tears. They glowed with the same light as her scales. They fell to the floor and pooled there, shimmering. The weeping went on and on. Ashaz's whole body shook with it. Her wings trembled. Her tail lashed once, twice, then went still. D1 stood frozen. He wanted to cover his ears, but something stopped him. Instead, he watched. He listened. He felt the sorrow in that sound wash over him like waves. Other servants had run from this. They had begged for reassignment. D1 understood why. The sound hurt. It made his own eyes water. It made him think of every sad thing he had ever experienced. But he did not run. He watched where HFY was looking. The far wall was bare metal. There was nothing special about it. No decoration, no window, just wall. He watched how she positioned herself, always the same way, always facing that exact direction. He watched the tears fall. They made patterns on the floor. Random patterns, he thought at first, but the more he looked, the more he wondered if they were truly random. After an hour, the weeping stopped. HFY lowered her head. Her scales dimmed again. She closed her eyes and became very still. D1's legs shook as he walked closer. Not too close, just close enough to see the tear patterns on the floor. The glowing liquid had spread out, creating dots and lines. He took out his personal data device and took a picture, then another from a different angle. He sat back down on his bench. His whole body felt tired, as if he had been crying instead of HFY. The next morning, Young-Soo found him in the servants' dining hall. Young-Soo was D1's only real friend in the palace. He was a few years older, with kind eyes and a nervous manner. "You survived the first night," Young-Soo said, sitting down with his breakfast. "I survived. The weeping. It happened just like they said." Young-Soo leaned closer. "And did you learn anything?" D1 thought about the patterns, the direction HFY faced, the way she positioned herself. "Maybe I need more time." "Be careful," Young-Soo warned. "Humans are meant to serve, not to solve imperial problems. The Korvath do not like it when we overstep. I am just doing my job." "Your job is to clean and maintain, nothing more." Young-Soo's voice dropped to a whisper. "I had a cousin who tried to improve the garden systems. He thought he was being helpful. They sent him to the ice mines of Valen 4. He died there in 6 months. D1 looked at his friend. Young-Soo was right to be afraid. The Korvath were not cruel, but they were strict. Each species had its place. Humans were servants. That was the way of things. But that night, when he returned to the sanctuary and saw HFY lying in her silent misery, waiting for midnight to come so she could weep again, D1 knew he could not just clean and maintain. Something was wrong with this dragon, and somehow he was going to find out what. D1 spent the next 7 nights documenting everything. He took pictures of the tear patterns each night. He measured the exact angle HFY faced. He noted the time down to the second. He wrote down every detail he could observe. The patterns in the tears were not random. He was sure of it now. Each night they formed similar shapes, dots and lines that reminded him of something, but he could not figure out what. During the day, he tried to research. The palace computers were restricted. Servants had access to basic functions only: cleaning schedules, food inventory, nothing useful. Young-Soo found him staring at his data device in the servants' quarters one afternoon. "You are still thinking about the dragon," Young-Soo said. It was not a question. "I need to access the archives. The real archives, not the servant databases." Young-Soo's face went pale. "That is forbidden. If they catch you, it is not the mines, it is worse." I know. Then why? D1 looked at his friend. How could he explain it? The way Ashaz's eyes looked when she wept, the pure grief in that sound, the feeling that this magnificent creature was suffering for a reason no one cared to understand. Because no one else is trying, D1 said finally. Young Su was quiet for a long time, then he sighed. I clean the administrative wing on rest days. The archivists take long meal breaks, exactly 1 hour. If someone were to be there during that hour, and if someone were very careful, and if someone were very quick, he looked away. I could perhaps forget to lock one door. Young Su, I cannot ask you to risk. You are not asking, I am offering. But D1, if we are caught, I never knew about this. Understand. D1 gripped his friend's shoulder. I understand, thank you. The next rest day, D1 walked into the archives with his cleaning supplies. Young Su had been true to his word. One door was unlocked. The archivists were gone. D1 had 1 hour. The archive room was filled with holographic terminals. He chose one in the back corner and activated it. His hands shook as he entered search terms. Asha, Dragon, Emperor Velthar. The computer hummed. Then files appeared, hundreds of them, battle reports, medical scans, training records, too many to read in an hour. He refined his search. Asha, Origin, History. Fewer files now. He opened the first one. It was a purchase record. 90 years ago, Emperor Velthar had acquired Asha from a dragon breeding facility on the moon Thalsara. The price had been enormous. Asha was described as prime specimen, ideal for imperial bonding. D1 opened another file. This one detailed the bonding ceremony. The Korvath had rituals for binding dragons to their chosen partners. The bond was mental and emotional, lasting until death. He kept reading, file after file of training reports, battle statistics, medical checkups, all routine, all normal. Then he found something different. It was a brief news report from 6 years ago. The moon Thalsara had been destroyed. A mining accident had caused a catastrophic chain reaction. The entire moon had broken apart. All life on it had been lost. Tens of thousands of dragons, Korvath, and other beings had died in minutes. D1 stared at the screen. Thalsara, Ashaz's birthplace. He searched for more information about Thalsara. He found star charts. The moon had orbited a large gas giant in the Korvath home system. He noted the orbital position, the angle from the palace on Korath Prime. His breath caught. The direction Asha faced during her weeping. It was the exact angle where Thalsara would have appeared in the night sky, where it would have been if it still existed. But there was more. He searched deeper, looking for information about dragon breeding on Thalsara. What he found made his hands shake. Dragons bonded twice in their lives, once with their chosen mate, once with their Korvath partner. The mate bond came first. It was permanent. Dragons were fiercely loyal to their mates, often living with them for centuries. Asha had come from Thalsara. She had been purchased from a breeding facility. That meant she had been separated from her mate to be sold to the Emperor. D1's mind raced. If Asha's mate had remained on Thalsara, and if Thalsara was destroyed 6 years ago, then 3 years ago. 3 years ago was when the weeping started. But why 3 years and not 6? He searched more frantically now, aware of time running out. He found it in a medical file. Dragons could sense their mates across vast distances. The bond was so strong that they could feel each other's presence even on different planets. But when a mate died, the surviving dragon would feel it. Not immediately. The bond took time to fade. Depending on the distance and the strength of the bond, it could take years for the surviving dragon to fully realize the mate was gone. The medical file estimated the process took approximately 3 years. Everything clicked into place. Asha's mate had died when Thalsara was destroyed. 6 years ago, the moon exploded. 3 years ago, Asha finally felt the bond break completely. That was when the weeping began. She was not defective. She was not malfunctioning. She was grieving. D1 closed the files quickly. He had been in the archives for 55 minutes. He left everything exactly as he had found it and slipped out. Young Soo was waiting down the hall, pretending to clean a wall panel. "Did you find anything?" Young Soo whispered. "Yes, everything." That night D1 returned to the sanctuary with a heavy heart. He looked at Asha with new eyes. This magnificent creature, this powerful dragon who could destroy fleets, was suffering from a broken heart. The Corveth did not understand. To them, dragons were tools. Valuable tools, yes, treated well and bonded with honor, but still tools. The idea that Asha had emotions complex enough to grieve for a lost mate would never occur to them. When midnight came and Asha began to weep, D1 wept too. Silent tears ran down his face as he listened to her pain. He understood now. The direction she faced was where her mate had been. The tears formed patterns like star charts because she was remembering the sky from Thalsara. The exact position of her body was how she had slept beside her mate. Everything she did was a memorial to what she had lost. The next morning, D1 requested a meeting with Haijin. She looked surprised when he entered her small office. "I need to speak with the Emperor," D1 said. Haijin set down the data pad she had been reading. "That is not how things work. Servants do not speak with the Emperor." "I know why Asha weeps." The room went very quiet. Haijin stared at him. "Explain." D1 told her everything. The research, the discovery about Thalsara, the mate bond, the 3-year timeline. As he spoke, Haijin's expression changed from skepticism to shock to something like wonder. "You believe the dragon is sad?" she asked. "I believe she is grieving. Humans understand grief. We have studied it in ourselves and in earth animals. Dogs mourn their lost owners. Elephants visit the bones of their dead. Whales sing songs of sadness when their pods are separated. Grief is not unique to humans. It exists in many species. The Corvath will never believe this. They do not think this way about their bonded creatures. Then we must make them understand, or at least try." Haijin studied him for a long moment. "If you are wrong, D1, they will send you to the worst posting imaginable, and I will be punished for bringing this to them." "I am not wrong." She stood up slowly. "I have served in this palace for 30 years. I have seen humans come and go. Most keep their heads down and do their work. But sometimes, very rarely, I meet one who sees more than they should, who cares more than is safe." She walked to the window. "I had a bonded companion once, a Corvath noble. He died in battle. The grief nearly killed me. No one understood. They thought I was simply mourning the loss of status, but I was mourning him, the person he was." She turned back to D1. "I will bring your petition to the advisory council. They will laugh at us. They will think we are foolish humans who do not understand our place, but I will try, because maybe, just maybe, you are right." D1 felt relief and terror in equal measure. "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet. The council meets in 3 days. Prepare yourself. You will need to present your findings, and D1, they will not be kind." The 3 days passed too quickly and too slowly at the same time. D1 spent every moment preparing. He organized his findings into a clear presentation. He practiced explaining grief to beings who had never considered it. Young Soo helped him rehearse during their breaks. "Explain it again," Young Soo said. "But simpler, remember, they think differently than we do." D1 took a breath. "On Earth, we had animals called dogs. They lived with humans for thousands of years. When a dog's human died, the dog would sometimes stop eating. It would wait at the door for the human to return. Some dogs died from grief." "Good, what else?" "Elephants. When an elephant dies, the rest of the herd touches the bones with their trunks. They stand in silence. They remember. This is grief. It exists across species." Young Soo nodded. "And you think this will convince the Emperor?" I think it is the truth. Whether it convinces him or not, I have to try." On the day of the council meeting, Hyjin came to collect him. She wore formal robes, something he had never seen before. Her face was calm, but her hands were tense. "Remember, do not argue, do not show anger. Present your findings clearly and respectfully. Let them make the decision." "I understand." They walked through the palace to the council chamber. The doors were massive, carved with images of dragons and Corveth warriors. Guards stood on either side. They did not look at D1 as he passed. Inside, the chamber was shaped like a half-circle. The emperor sat at the center on a raised platform. He was larger than most Corveth, his chitinous body gleaming in the light. His compound eyes were like dark jewels. Around him sat 12 council members, each a powerful figure in the empire. D1 felt very small. "Approach." The emperor's voice was like gravel rolling down a metal slope. D1 walked forward with Hyjin beside him. They stopped at the designated spot and bowed. "You are the human who claims to understand my dragon better than my own experts." The emperor's tone was not hostile, but it was not friendly either. "I claim only to have observed something they may have missed, Your Majesty." One of the council members, a Corvath with deep red coloring, clicked his mandibles. "This is absurd. A servant summoned before the council. What precedent does this set?" Another council member, this one blue-black in color, leaned forward. "Let the human speak. If his claims are foolish, it will be obvious quickly enough." The emperor gestured with one clawed hand. "Present your findings." D1 activated the holographic display from his data pad. Images appeared in the air above him. Pictures of a Sha, the tier patterns, star charts. "A Sha weeps every night at the same time," D1 began. "She faces the same direction. She positions her body in the same way. For 3 years this has continued without change." "We know this already," the Red Council member said impatiently. "What we do not know is why. Our medical teams have found nothing wrong with her." "Because nothing is wrong with her body. Something is wrong with her heart." Silence filled the chamber. The Corvath looked at each other. D1 could feel their confusion. "Explain," the Emperor commanded. D1 showed them the star charts. "The direction a Sha faces is toward where the moon Thalsera once existed. That was her birthplace. 6 years ago, Thalsera was destroyed. 3 years ago, a Sha began weeping. This is not coincidence." "The moon's destruction was a tragedy," the Blue-Black Council member said. "But what does it have to do with a Sha's behavior now?" "Dragons bond with mates before they bond with Corvath partners. A Sha was purchased from Thalsera 90 years ago. That means she was separated from her mate to be brought here. When Thalsera was destroyed, her mate died with it." The council members shifted in their seats. The Emperor's eyes fixed on D1 with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "You are suggesting," the Emperor said slowly, "that my dragon is mourning." "Yes, Your Majesty. She is grieving for her lost mate." The Red Council member made a harsh sound. "Ridiculous. Dragons are biological tools. They are bonded to us through neural pathways. They do not have complex emotions like grief." "With respect, Council member, they do." D1 changed the holographic display. Now it showed images from Earth, dogs sitting by graves, elephants touching bones, whales separated from their pods. "On my homeworld, we have observed grief in many species. It is not unique to beings with high intelligence. It is a fundamental response to loss." "Earth is a death world," another council member said. "Your animals are primitive. You cannot compare them to dragons." "I can compare the behavior. When a dog loses its bonded human, it stops eating. It waits for the human to return. Sometimes it dies from sadness. When an elephant's family member dies, the herd gathers around the body. They touch it. They stay for days. They remember. These are not primitive responses. They are evidence of emotional bonds." D1 showed more images, the tier patterns, Ashaz's tears form shapes like star maps. She is remembering the sky from Thalsara. The position of her body is how she slept beside her mate. Every night she recreates the memorial in her mind and in her actions. The Emperor stood up. The entire council went quiet. He walked down from his platform and approached the holographic display. For a long moment he studied the images. "Are you suggesting," he said quietly, "that I have been a poor caretaker, that I have neglected my dragon's needs?" D1's heart raced. This was the dangerous moment. "No, Your Majesty, I am suggesting that understanding grief is not part of Korvath culture. You have given Asha everything she needs physically, but grief is not a physical need. It is an emotional one. And you believe you can address this emotional need. You, a human servant." "I believe I can try. On Earth, when beings grieve, we create memorials. We honor what was lost. We give the grieving a place to remember. If I could create such a place for Asha, it might ease her pain." The Red Council member stood up angrily. "This is insulting. You stand before the Emperor and claim that our ways are insufficient, that a human knows better than the entire Korvath Empire. I claim only that different worlds teach different lessons. Earth taught us to understand grief because survival required it. We had to understand the emotional needs of other species to bond with them. This is not superior knowledge. It is simply different knowledge." The Blue-Black Council member spoke up. "What exactly do you propose?" "A memorial for Asha's mate, a place within the sanctuary where she can honor what she lost. I would need resources, holographic projectors, materials to build a physical monument, and time." "And if you fail," the Emperor asked, "then I accept whatever punishment you deem appropriate." The Emperor looked at D1 for a long time. Then he looked at Hyjin. "You support this proposal?" Hyjin bowed. "I do, Your Majesty. I have observed this human for years. He is thorough and honest. More importantly, he cares about Asha's well-being. That is rare." The council members argued among themselves. Some thought it was foolish to waste resources on a human's theory. Others were curious. A few seemed genuinely intrigued by the idea that dragons could grieve. Finally, the Emperor raised his hand. Silence fell immediately. "I will allow this," he said. "You will have one lunar cycle to create your memorial. If Asha's weeping stops, you will have proven your theory. I will grant you one request, whatever it may be." D1 bowed deeply. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "But if you fail," the Emperor continued, his voice hard, "you will be sent to the deuterium mines of Kravos 7. It is a harsh place. Few survive more than a year there. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Then you may begin." D1 and Hyjin left the council chamber. Once they were in the hallway, Hyjin let out a breath she had been holding. "You have 1 month," she said. "What do you need?" "I need holographic projectors capable of creating a stable star field. I need crystalline materials that can catch and reflect light. I need access to the sanctuary at all hours. And I need help." "Young Su will help you. I will assign others as well." Quietly, she looked at him seriously. "D1, some members of the council do not want you to succeed. They will see it as a challenge to Korvath's superiority. They may try to sabotage your work." "Why would they do that?" "Because if a human servant solves a problem that the Empire's greatest minds could not, it makes them look weak. Some Korvath would rather see you fail than admit humans have value beyond menial labor." D1 had not considered this. He had been so focused on helping Asha that he had not thought about the political implications. "What should I do?" "Work quickly, work carefully, and watch for interference. I will do what I can to protect you, but my influence has limits." That night D1 returned to the sanctuary. Asha was awake, her glowing eyes watching him as he entered. He walked closer than he ever had before, still not close enough to touch, but close enough to speak softly. "I am going to help you," he told her. I am going to build something for you, a place to remember. I do not know if you understand me, but I promise I will try. Asha tilted her head slightly. Her scales shimmered. For just a moment, D1 thought he saw understanding in those ancient eyes. Then midnight came, and the weeping began again. The work began immediately. Hyjin assigned Young Su and 3 other human servants to help D1. She also provided access to the palace surplus storage, where old equipment and materials were kept. D1's design was simple in concept, but difficult in execution. He wanted to create a platform in the sanctuary that would project the night sky as it had appeared from Thalsara. At the center would be a sculpture representing Asha's maid, made from crystalline material that would catch light and create the illusion of movement. We need the holographic projectors from the old meditation chambers, D1 explained to Young Su as they searched through storage. The ones that could project entire environments. They found 6 projectors, all outdated but still functional. Young Su tested each one carefully. 2 were broken beyond repair. 4 worked barely. This is not enough, Young Su said. To fill a space as large as the sanctuary, we need at least 10 projectors, maybe more. Then we will use mirrors and reflective surfaces to amplify what we have. We can create the illusion of depth. A servant named Bora, a quiet woman who worked in the garden, spoke up. I can get you crystal panels from the old greenhouse. They are being replaced anyway. They refract light beautifully. That would be perfect, D1 said gratefully. The days blurred together. D1 barely slept. Every night he worked in the sanctuary while Asha watched. Every day he gathered materials and refined his plans. But problems arose quickly. On the 5th day, 2 of the holographic projectors stopped working. When Young Su examined them, he found that someone had damaged the power cores. This was deliberate, Young Su said quietly, showing D1 the melted components. Someone overloaded them on purpose. D1 felt cold. Hyjin had warned him, but he had hoped the council would at least allow him a fair chance. Can you fix them? Not quickly, maybe in a week. We do not have a week. We need to work with what we have. On the 10th day, their crystal panels disappeared from storage. Bora went to retrieve them and found the space empty. The inventory logs showed they had been transferred to another department. When she asked about it, the Korvath administrator claimed no knowledge of any greenhouse panels. D1 felt frustration building. They were running out of time and resources. We need to find another way, he told the team that evening. We cannot give up. A servant named Ti Yang, an older man who worked in maintenance, had an idea. The old chapel in the East Wing was decommissioned last year. It had crystal fixtures for the lighting. No one has removed them yet, if we are careful. They were careful. They worked at night, removing the crystal fixtures piece by piece. Ti Yang was skilled with tools, able to disconnect the delicate components without breaking them. Each obstacle made the work harder, but it also brought the team closer together. They were not just servants anymore. They were collaborators working toward something meaningful. Hyjin visited the sanctuary on the 15th day. She looked at their progress and nodded approvingly. You are halfway through your time, she said. How does it look? It will be close, D1 admitted. We have had some setbacks. I know, I have been watching. The Red Council member Carthax has been very active. He does not want you to succeed. Why does he care so much? Hyjin was quiet for a moment. Because his family breeds dragons for the Empire. If your theory is correct, if dragons can grieve and need emotional care, it changes how dragons must be treated. Breeding facilities would need to account for mate bonds. It would be more expensive, more complicated. Carthax sees this as a threat to his family's profits. D1 had not considered the economic implications. He had only thought about Asha. What should I do? Keep working. I will try to run interference. But D1, you need to finish this soon. The longer it takes, the more opportunities he has to sabotage you. They worked even harder. Young-Soo managed to repair one of the damaged projectors. Bora wove the crystal fixtures into beautiful patterns. Ti-Yang built a stable platform that would not interfere with the sanctuary's existing systems. Slowly, the memorial took shape. The platform stood in the center of the sanctuary, elevated just enough to be visible from where a HFY usually rested. The 4 working holographic projectors were positioned at the corners, angled to create a dome of stars above the platform. The crystal fixtures hung from thin wires, positioned to catch and scatter light in specific patterns. At the very center of the platform, D1 placed his most important creation. Using spare metal and crystal, he had sculpted the shape of a dragon in flight. It was not perfect. He was no artist, but he had worked on it every spare moment, trying to capture the grace and power of what a HFY's mate might have looked like. The sculpture was small compared to a HFY herself, but it would catch the light from the holographic stars and the crystal fixtures. It would shimmer and shift, creating the illusion of movement. A dragon forever in flight, never landing, never fatting. On the 20th day, they were ready to test the system. Young-Soo activated the holographic projectors. The star field appeared above them, shimmering and vast. It was not perfect. There were gaps where they did not have enough projectors. Some stars flickered, but it was recognizable. It was the sky from Thalsara. Bora activated the crystal fixtures. Light bounced and refracted, filling the gaps in the star field, adding depth and dimension. The sculpture at the center caught all this light and threw it back in rainbow patterns. For a moment, it truly looked like a dragon flying through the stars. "It is beautiful," Bora whispered. D1 felt tears in his eyes. It will work, it has to work. But that night, disaster struck. D1 arrived at the sanctuary for his shift and found the memorial destroyed. The platform was intact, but all the crystal fixtures had been shattered. The holographic projectors had been smashed. Even the central sculpture was broken, its delicate wings snapped off. Young-Soo stood in the middle of the destruction, his face pale with shock. "I found it like this," he said. "I came early to do a final check and—" He gestured helplessly at the ruin. D1 felt something break inside him. 10 days of work, gone, and they only had 10 days left. Asha watched from her resting place. Her eyes seemed darker than usual, or maybe that was just D1's imagination. Hyjin arrived within the hour. Her face was hard with anger. "Carthax," she said, "it has to be, but I cannot prove it. He has covered his tracks well." "We cannot rebuild in time," D1 said. His voice sounded hollow. "We do not have enough materials. We do not have enough projectors." "Then you must present what you have to the Emperor. Explain what happened. Perhaps he will grant you more time." "He will not. The council wanted a demonstration, not excuses. I failed." Young-Soo gripped his shoulder. "You did not fail, you were sabotaged. That is different. The result is the same. Asha will continue to weep, and I will go to the mines." Hyjin looked at him with surprising gentleness. "I told you that I once lost someone I bonded with. When he died, I wanted to build a memorial for him, but my family said no. They said it was inappropriate for a human to mourn a Korvath so publicly, so I grieved alone in silence. It nearly destroyed me." She walked to the broken memorial and picked up a piece of crystal. "What you tried to do here matters, D1. Even if it fails, even if no one else understands. You saw suffering and you tried to ease it. That is not weakness. That is the strongest thing a being can do." D1 looked at the destruction again. Then he looked at Asha. The dragon had not moved. She just watched him with those glowing eyes. Something shifted in his chest, a quiet determination. "No," he said. Everyone looked at him. "No," he repeated, stronger now. "We still have 10 days. We might not have all the materials we need. We might not be able to rebuild everything. But we can build something. Even a small memorial is better than nothing. D1, Youngsu said gently, we do not have enough. Then we improvise. We use what we have. Bora, are there any crystal fixtures left in the old chapel? Maybe a few small ones. Get them, Youngsu. Can you repair even one projector? Maybe, if I cannibalize the broken ones for parts. Do it. Ti-Yang, can you rebuild the sculpture? The old man examined the broken pieces. The body is intact. The wings are gone, but I can fashion new ones from scrap metal. They will not be as beautiful, but they will work. Then we work. We have 10 days. We use every hour. We build what we can, and we hope it is enough. Haijin smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was pride in it. You truly are remarkable, you know that. They worked without stopping. They slept in shifts in the sanctuary. They ate their meals while installing components. Every moment counted. The memorial that emerged was smaller than the original design. The star field was incomplete, with dark patches where there should have been light. The crystal fixtures were fewer and simpler. The sculpture's new wings were clearly makeshift, rough metal instead of delicate crystal. But it was real. It existed. And when they activated it on the final night, it was beautiful in its imperfection. The stars flickered but held steady. The crystals caught the light and scattered it. The sculpture, with its rough metal wings, somehow looked more real than the perfect crystal version had. It looked like it had survived something, like it had endured. D1 set the system to activate every night at midnight, the exact time Asha began to weep. Tomorrow the Emperor comes, Haijin said. He will judge whether this is sufficient. D1 nodded. He was too tired to be nervous. Whatever happens, we did our best. That night at midnight, the memorial activated for the first time while Asha was present. The star field bloomed above the platform. The sculpture caught the light and seemed to fly. The dragon rose, watching. And then something happened that D1 had not expected. Asha made a sound, not the weeping. A different sound, soft and low and questioning. She stood up and walked toward the memorial slowly, carefully. She approached the platform and lowered her massive head. She looked at the sculpture, at the stars, at the light dancing across the crystal. And she did not weep. She made that soft sound again. It was gentle. It was sad, but it was also something else, something like peace. Youngsu grabbed D1's arm. It is working. By all the stars, it is actually working. Emperor Velthar arrived at the sanctuary exactly at dawn. The entire council came with him, including Carthax. D1 stood beside the memorial with his team. They were all exhausted. They had stayed awake all night, watching Asha interact with the memorial. The dragon had not wept. Instead, she had settled beside the platform, her massive body curled around it protectively. Her scales pulsed with a soft, steady light. Her eyes were closed. She looked peaceful. The emperor approached the memorial. His compound eyes examined every detail. The flickering stars, the simple crystal fixtures, the sculpture with its rough metal wings. "This is what you built?" he asked. "Yes, Your Majesty," D1 replied. His voice was steady despite his fear. "The memorial was sabotaged 10 days ago. We rebuilt what we could with the materials we had left." Carthax stepped forward. "You accuse someone of sabotage. That is a serious claim." "I state only facts. The memorial was destroyed. We rebuilt it." The emperor walked around the platform slowly. He looked at Asha, still sleeping peacefully beside it. "She did not weep last night." "No, Your Majesty. For the first time in 3 years, she was quiet." "One night proves nothing. Perhaps she was simply tired." "Then observe her tonight," D1 said. "And the night after. The memorial is set to activate every night at midnight. If my theory is correct, she will not weep anymore." The blue-black council member, who had shown interest before, spoke up. "What exactly did you create here, human?" D1 explained. "The star field recreated the sky from Thalsara. the sculpture representing Ashaz's lost mate, the timing matching when she used to weep. He explained it all in simple, clear terms. "You believe," the emperor said slowly, "that my dragon was grieving, and this memorial gives her a place to honor that grief." "Yes, your majesty. On Earth, we learned that grief is not something to be fixed or cured. It is something to be acknowledged. When we lose someone important, we create memorials. We build places to remember, not to forget the pain, but to give it a home, so it does not consume us." The emperor was quiet for a long time. He looked at Ashaz with an expression D1 could not read. "I have been bonded to Ashaz for 90 years, the emperor said finally. "I trained with her, fought beside her. I thought I knew her completely, but I did not understand this." "How could you, your majesty? The Korvath are magnificent beings. Your empire spans systems. Your technology surpasses most species, but every culture has knowledge that others lack. Earth taught us about grief because we needed to understand it to survive." Carthax made an angry sound. "This is foolishness. One quiet night means nothing. The dragon probably." Ashaz opened her eyes. The massive dragon lifted her head and looked directly at Carthax. Her eyes glowed brighter. A low rumble came from deep in her chest, not aggressive but clear, a warning. Carthax stepped back quickly. The emperor watched this interaction carefully. Then he looked at D1 again. "My dragon seems to disagree with council member Carthax." There was something almost like amusement in his voice. "Ashaz knows who tried to help her," Hyjin said quietly, "and who did not." The emperor nodded slowly. "We will observe for 3 more nights. If Ashaz remains peaceful, if the weeping does not return, then your theory is proven. Come. The council will retire to observe from the upper chambers." They left, all except Hyjin. She stayed with D1 and his team. "3 more nights," she said. "Can you last that long?" "We have no choice." The second night came. At midnight the memorial activated. The stars appeared. The sculpture caught the light. Ashaz woke from her rest and approached the platform. She made that soft, questioning sound again. She touched her nose to the sculpture gently, carefully, as if it were precious and fragile. She did not weep. She settled beside the memorial and hummed. It was a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through the entire sanctuary. It was not sad. It was peaceful. It was the sound of a being who had been carrying a heavy burden and could finally set it down. From the upper chambers, D1 could see the council watching. Even from this distance, he could sense their shock. The third night was the same. Ashaz approached the memorial at midnight. She touched the sculpture. She hummed her peaceful song. She rested beside it. No weeping, no tears, just quiet acceptance. On the fourth night, the emperor came alone. He arrived before midnight and stood beside D1 in silence. Together, they watched the memorial activate. Together, they watched Ashaz's ritual of remembrance. "Tell me about Earth," the emperor said quietly. D1 was surprised by the request. "What would you like to know, your majesty?" "You call it a death world. Explain what that means." "Earth is harsh, the gravity is heavy, the weather is extreme, predators are everywhere, disease is common. For most species in the galaxy, Earth would be unlivable. But humans evolved there. We adapted. We learned to survive not by being the strongest or the fastest, but by understanding other living things." Understanding. How does understanding help you survive? "We bonded with wolves to create dogs. They helped us hunt. We domesticated plants and animals to feed ourselves. We studied the patterns of migrating birds to predict weather. We learned to read the emotions of animals to know when danger was near. Understanding was our survival tool. It made us strong in a different way." The emperor watched Ashaz touch the sculpture with her massive nose. "And you learned about grief this way?" "We learned it from ourselves first. Humans grieve deeply. We bury our dead with ceremony. We create monuments. We tell stories about those we lost. Then we saw the same patterns in animals, dogs mourning their owners, elephants standing vigil over their dead, whales singing songs of loss. We realized grief was not unique to us. It was fundamental to beings who could love. Love, the Emperor repeated the word carefully. The Korvath do not use this word the way humans do. Perhaps not, but you bond with your dragons. That bond must be built on something: trust, loyalty, respect. These are forms of love. And you believe Asha loved her mate. I believe she bonded with her mate the same way she bonded with you, deeply, permanently. When that bond was broken by death, she grieved. She still grieves, but now she has a place to put that grief, so it does not consume her. The Emperor was quiet for a long time. Asha finished her ritual and settled beside the memorial. Her bioluminescence pulsed slowly, steadily, like a heartbeat. You succeeded, the Emperor said finally. In 3 years, no one could stop the weeping. You did it in less than 1 month. I only gave her what she needed, a place to remember. You gave her more than that, you gave her understanding. The Emperor turned to face D1 fully. I promised you one request if you succeeded. What do you ask for? D1 had thought about this moment many times. He knew what most humans would ask for: freedom, wealth, status, all reasonable requests. But he thought of Asha. He thought of all the other dragons in the Empire, bonded to Korvath, who did not understand their emotional needs. He thought of the breeding facilities that separated mates without consideration for the bonds they were breaking. I ask that humans be allowed to work with dragons throughout the Empire. Let us teach others what we learned on our death world: how to understand grief, how to recognize emotional needs, how to help these magnificent creatures live fully, not just exist. The Emperor's mandibles moved in what might have been surprise. You ask not for yourself but for others. I ask for the dragons, your majesty, and for the Korvath who bond with them. Understanding will make those bonds stronger. The Emperor considered this. Your request is granted, but I will go further. I create a new position in the Empire, keeper of living bonds. You will be the first. You will train others, both human and Korvath, in understanding the emotional needs of bonded creatures. D1 felt something bloom in his chest. Hope, your majesty, I am honored. Haijin will oversee this new department. She has experience with loss. She understands what you are trying to teach. Young Su and your other helpers will be assigned to work with you. Together, you will visit dragon breeding facilities, training centers, and bonded pairs throughout the Empire. Thank you, your majesty. The Emperor looked at Asha again. I have been bonded to her for 90 years. I thought I knew everything about her, but I did not see her pain. I did not understand her grief. You, a human servant who met her only weeks ago, saw what I missed. This is humbling. Different worlds teach different lessons, your majesty. Earth taught us about emotion because we had to learn it to survive. The Korvath learned other things: technology, strategy, empire building. Neither is better. They are simply different. Perhaps, the Emperor said, or perhaps your death world taught you something we desperately needed to learn. That strength is not just about power. It is also about understanding. In the days that followed, word spread throughout the Galactic Council. The story of the human servant who solved what the Korvath Empire's greatest minds could not. The story of the weeping dragon and the memorial built from scrap and determination. Other species began requesting human advisors, not for technology or military strategy, but for understanding. Humans who could observe bonded creatures and recognize emotional needs. Humans who understood that survival sometimes meant caring for the heart as well as the body. The Korvath Empire's perspective began to shift, slowly, reluctantly in some quarters, but it shifted. Humans were no longer seen only as servants. They were specialists in a field the Empire had never developed: emotional intelligence, compassionate observation, the ability to see suffering and want to ease it. Carthax tried to fight the changes. He argued in council meetings. He petitioned the Emperor. But when the breeding facilities began implementing new protocols that considered mate bonds, and when those facilities reported healthier, happier dragons, his arguments lost strength. D1 traveled to 17 different worlds in his first year as Keeper of Living Bonds. He met dragons who were aggressive because they were lonely, dragons who refused to eat because they missed their birthplaces, dragons who were brilliant fighters but were emotionally neglected. With each one he applied the same principles: observe, understand, create solutions that addressed emotional needs, not just physical ones. Hyjin proved to be an excellent administrator. She managed the growing department with firm efficiency. She also trained new keepers, both human and Korvath. Some Korvath were skeptical at first, but when they saw the results, they became the most dedicated students. Young Su became one of the best trainers. His gentle manner and careful observation skills made him perfect for teaching others how to recognize emotional distress in bonded creatures. 6 months after the memorial was built, D1 returned to the palace. He visited the sanctuary late at night. Asha was there, resting beside her memorial. The stars flickered above her. The sculpture caught the light and seemed to fly. Emperor Velthar was there too, sitting quietly on the observation platform. "I come here sometimes," the Emperor said, "to watch her, to try to understand what I missed for so long." D1 sat beside him. "You did not miss it because you were cruel or careless. You missed it because you were never taught to look for it. And you were taught on your harsh homeworld. Yes, Earth demanded that we understand all life if we wanted to survive. It was not kindness that taught us. It was necessity, but necessity became wisdom, and wisdom became compassion." They sat in silence watching Asha. The dragon's scales pulsed with gentle light. She made her humming sound peaceful and content. "She seems happier," the Emperor observed. "She has a place to put her grief now. It will never go away completely. Grief does not work that way, but it has a home. It is no longer consuming her." The Emperor stood to leave, then paused. "Thank you, D1, for seeing what I could not, for caring enough to risk everything. Thank you for listening, Your Majesty, for being willing to learn from a servant species." After the Emperor left, D1 approached Asha. The dragon opened one eye and watched him. He had touched her once since building the memorial, carefully placing his hand on her scales. She had allowed it, a sign of trust. He did it again now, his small human hand on her massive crystalline scales. "You are at peace," he whispered. "That is all I wanted, for you to find peace." Asha made a low, warm sound. Then she did something she had never done before. She lowered her massive head and gently touched her nose to D1's chest, right over his heart. It was the dragon's way of saying thank you. D1 looked up at the memorial, at the stars, at the sculpture with its rough metal wings forever frozen in flight, a memorial to love and loss, a reminder that grief was not weakness but proof of the depth of connection. He thought about Earth, his harsh, deadly, beautiful homeworld, the place that taught humanity its greatest lesson. That survival was not just about being strong. It was about understanding that all life, no matter how different, shared the same fundamental needs: to be seen, to be understood, to be allowed to grieve. And sometimes, in the quiet moments of connection between species, to find peace.